Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment course from New Earth One Network. This is designed exclusively for your higher self connection and embodiment. Welcome to this Mastery Empowerment class. This is the Arcturian MindSet transmissions, and it's an introduction to a series of transmissions that we'll be doing with Jean Eng and the Arcturians, as well as our guides and angels. Hi, Jean. Welcome.
Hi, Lauren. Hi, everyone. Really excited about this next series. And of course, this is the beginning of the year and the whole new cycle of Mastery Empowerment classes.
And as we talk about mindsets in this introduction, it's really interesting because mindsets are one thing. Mindsets might think that they are belief systems, are they? So talk with us about your definition of mindsets.
Yeah, exactly. This is a pretty exciting topic, in general, but also in the psychological research literature. There's a lot of research now on mindsets and how actually it's very practical and it affects such things as exercise, meditation, health in general. And so we can kind of go into those details. But in general, mindsets are sort of our beliefs or our thoughts regarding a particular topic or subject. And for many of us, we may be aware of them. A lot of times we're utilizing them very practically in what they call in psychology heuristically, meaning they kind of get us from point A to point B in the easiest fashion. And sometimes we may not be, even in things we think we're aware of, not aware of exactly what our beliefs or our mindset is around a topic. And what we'll go into probably later here in the talk is by becoming even just conscious of even straightforward topics, what our mindsets are, we can make radical changes to our enjoyment of the world, our interaction with others, and really our kind of self-efficacious behavior or beneficial behavior.
We often talk about belief systems, limiting belief systems. And now we're actually going to turn them into the positive. We're going to shift it from limiting belief systems, or BS that we call it, to beneficial mindsets that actually, when you said referring to health or exercise, we know that athletes, if they visualize something, they've got a mindset of them already winning or achieving their goals. So that's really what we're talking about here. And we've got a series of 3 of these. Let's go over, because it's our self-image, and that's a big one, especially for light workers, the self-image. If we have doubt or are not feeling good about ourselves, then our minds can really drag us down into that. And then we're talking about mindsets with others and the world, and then mindsets around self-talk. We'll go into each of these, but isn't it important to, as you said, become conscious of this, because it's that consciousness that allows us to shift it in the positive direction?
Yeah, that's so accurate and right. Hits the nail on the head. And I just wanted to share a couple things that may be a little more subtle that people might not recognize. And these are some scientific studies actually done in psychology. The most recent one, they kind of called it the milkshake study for short, but it's kind of really cute in a way, but also very profound. It sort of builds on the placebo effect, but in a way that may reveal sort of how our mindsets can actually change even our physiology. So the gist of the study is that people were given a milkshake, two groups, and they were told that they were doing something else, like looking at nutrient density or something, so that they wouldn't know what was actually being tested. And one group was told that this was like a high fat, calorie rich milkshake. And then the other group was told that this was like a low carb, protein high, sort of build your muscles milkshake. In fact, they were the same exact shake, nutrient wise. What was interesting is that, and even counterintuitive, is that the group that received the high fat so-called milkshake, when they measured all these physiological measurements, reacted as if they had just been satiated, meaning there's a particular hormone called ghrelin, which is shows that suppresses appetite because you've eaten enough. And so they had high levels of ghrelin, while the ones who said that this was like a high protein, or however you might say, this nutritious milkshake, actually showed lower levels of ghrelin. So they actually would feel hungrier after eating it. And people might report this on who've gone on diets. I know I've had that experience. So actually, the one of the kind of conclusions the psychologist made from this is it may be worthwhile to, when you're eating, to really think very positively about your food, regardless of what it is, because in some ways you'll feel nurtured or fully fed. So it's very interesting how, like, this is, of course, maybe the second topic or transmission is our beliefs around the world or others, and even, ways that we wouldn't think are affecting us. Because a lot of times we'll try to, in this example, eat very healthy. And in fact, we're probably eating nutrients that are maybe lower in calories and healthy, but we may actually be kind of almost convincing ourselves that we need our physiology to eat more because we're not actually eating that dessert-like meal, which would make us think, oh, I'm full, even though in this example, both nutrients were the same. So this is fascinating.
Yeah, that is really interesting. And it helps to explain too. So, for instance, if you see cookies, let's go and say, okay, so milkshakes, but the cookies that are fat-free, the fat-free revolution, actually, people looked at that and they said, well, it's fat-free, but I still ate a lot of it.
Right.
Because it wasn't satiating. But and maybe they could do the fat-free cookies and they're both the same cookie, but if one thinks that it's calorie packed, they might just enjoy it a little bit better. That's actually turning our heads around on a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fascinating research, and I think that was one of the inspirations for having this series. I kind of thought the words that were coming to me is like, we are in the beginning of the year, kind of also in the beginning of the lunar year, and kind of reinventing ourselves with the latest, accurate sort of tools that we have, and a lot of those start with the mental tools. So.
And the mental tools, we can see how this is going to affect every area. So we could call it programming. We hear that word a lot, but I like the word mindset because it allows us to, again, I'm going to use that word shift it. It can shift it to a more positive perspective. And when we're talking about abundance, for example, when we look at mindsets around others and the world, a lot of things to be recognized would be, especially for, let's say, lack consciousness or poverty consciousness, let's say, that is a mindset. And we could identify within ourselves that, oh, people with money over there, they're bad, right? That would be a negative mindset towards, or a false belief. So false belief systems mindsets, they're kind of all one and the same. So here we are, we're going to be downloading beneficial mindsets in these areas. So it's going to allow us to see the limiting belief systems or the negative mindsets that we have, or even self-doubt, self-talk that we give ourselves. So we'll be stronger at recognizing these areas so we can shift them.
Yeah, exactly. And I like what you just brought up because we could kind of extrapolate on that milkshake uh, results to the prosperity and abundance. So, you know, the shake could be some object that we just tend to, you know, have as a way to kind of see where we're on the abundance experience. And kind of the group that sort of was the fully fed with the kind of dessert-like shake is the group that kind of is given the same exact object, but said, maybe told how valuable it is or how prosperous it is. And so when they receive it, it could be like a $5 worth object. They just don't know. And so then they experience the world. They probably could, if they could figure out where you might, maybe they could measure dopamine levels, like dopamine being kind of like how you're happy about the world is usually tracked directly to how much free blood dopamine levels you have. This could be an interesting experience. And they probably would release a lot of, based on these studies, possibly a lot of dopamine, whereas the same group might be given an object, the same object, and said, you know, this is kind of maybe doesn't have the design label, isn't really symbolically that abundant, and then test their dopamine levels after using it. And they may have like lower dopamine levels. They may not feel as abundant. And then they need more, like you said, like it's kind of a poverty consciousness, but it's the same exact object. So yeah, so I think that we probably have experienced that or could see that.
And so this first transmission, day one, we're going to be focusing on mindsets around our self-image. And this is interesting because that could go with being overweight, being underweight, being young, being older. As we age, there's mindsets around that. So I can see where this is very beneficial. I have friends who are in their 60s and they say they feel and look great. And they do feel and look great. So this is really something to pay attention to. And you can meet someone who is 70 and they don't even look 70. So that's really powerful about our self-image as well, because my goodness, it's society's beliefs that put us in these mindsets that this is what happens when you age, but it doesn't have to be that way. So what are your thoughts about this first transmission around self-image?
Yeah, I think another pivotal sort of intuition about, you know, kind of maybe downloading or doing this as a master empowerment class was I had recently been doing a lot of study for another class on habits. And people might know this book is quite popular. It's James Clear's book on habits. I'll think of the full title. But basically, I was rereading it, and there's a particular concept he went over, which was self-image. So and that is actually the most determining factor on habits and creating new habits, which is great for this New Year sort of theme. But so we might think, okay, I'm going to try to write every day, you know, because you want to maybe write a book, for example. But actually, if you still don't think of yourself as a writer, that will be a more determining factor than if you consider first, whether you create the habit of writing every day or not, that you're actually a writer. Because that self-image, you'll just do activities that continue to bolster that self-image. So someone who considers themselves a writer, even if they write like 3 minutes a day, it will continue to bolster that idea that they're a writer. So, and they're the ones who likely will continue that activity all the way through. Whereas someone who, even with a lot of will and determination, continues to write every day, but then somehow doesn't really think that their self-image is one of a writer, that habit will either take a longer time to create or sustain, or it won't be as something that sustains. So he was saying it's more important first to determine exactly what self-image you want to create rather than what habit you want to install. So I thought that was also a powerful kind of study and realization kind of in that research.
So as we are working with these transmissions and we receive these 3 days of transmissions, what do we need to do? Are we going to be working on our self-image? Are we going to be assisted with this? What's going to happen through those downloads that come?
Yeah, well, I think what's great about having the multidimensional work that we've been doing is that then we can, make that intention to our guides. Somewhat, they may be guiding us to have this realization, and then on a reciprocal way, we can ask them now, sort of like what are the self images like for the first transmission that maybe I'm aware of, maybe I'm unaware of. Those are particularly the ones that probably you want to clear. Images that aren't serving me first. Maybe we do have a self-image like I'm a non-exerciser, for example. Not that exercise is going to make or break one's life, but let's just say one wanted to be more active. But if you have an image like I was told, or someone told me I wasn't good at gym, when I was in 5th grade, and I just have this, you can even hear them in their self-talk, which comes to the third portion. They'll just say, like, I'm not good at exercising. Immediately, from based on this research and what I just mentioned and the self-image, that yes, they probably will try to get onto a New Year's program and join the gym. But as a coach, maybe, or as a person, their friend, or just maybe that's yourself, you'll see that it's almost like the sabotage is right already in the beginning, because that image, which was reflected, revealed in the self-talk, sort of already put them in a category that where they're kind of running uphill or pushing the boulder uphill. Whereas if someone, or they, in the transmission, okay, I'm going to clear that, and maybe just have a new self-image that, yes, I have a beautiful body and I'm active. Whether that means you walk down the stairs and up the stairs 10 times, or, you go, to LA Fitness every day, it doesn't really matter. But then you'll think any activity is demonstrating that self-image, and then it's like a positive cycle. So the transmission is set up into asking the guides, kind of the spiritual consciousness that we work with, first help reveal or clear, and also forgive. Forgive meaning, it's okay if I had that that view that I was, not the best, volleyball player in 5th grade, and so maybe thought I wasn't very active, and then so that's kind of a purification aspect, and then an imprinting. Maybe there are ones that people can be conscious of, in the course where they know, okay, I want to, install these 3, and then the energies will help do that, as well as maybe bring in new ideas that we never even thought we could hold of ourselves.
Yeah, that's very cool. Okay. So I love the fact that we're going to purify, because that seems really powerful. We may not be aware of some of the subconscious mindsets that we have. So we'll be assisted in these transmissions to help reveal those as well. And so we purify, and then we imprint the new mindsets. And I love what you said there about the forgiveness aspect. That really is key, especially if they're, because we could get really down on ourselves if we feel overweight or underweight or whatever it is. So that forgiveness piece is really forgiving ourselves. So it's almost bringing us a clean slate then for the imprinting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a very kind of balanced approach to this process.
So then it's wonderful, because that's session 1, and we can always chat with the folks who are in the group to see what comes up for people, but it just feels really fresh and empowering, that first one. And the second one is mindsets around others and the world. Now, this one is interesting because, again, it reflects back on us if we're looking out at the world. and we're just thinking like, oh, they have it so good, right? And that could reflect back at us, or we could suffer because we're comparing ourselves with others. When we compare ourselves with others, we do suffer. So this one's important to alleviate those mindsets that diminish our light and our own value of ourselves.
Yeah, exactly. And people may have worked on this. I know a lot of prosperity courses, had focused on this kind of in the like worker community, mindsets around money. We'll just start there because it's, maybe people have already worked on that. But, if money was considered evil, like we've heard that phrase, we may have actually subconsciously imbibed that phrase. Or money, let's say you must work hard for the amount of money you earn. Like it's got to be either direct or more, which sometimes we put that under the puritanical mindset, something that I've imbibed also or seen in my own life, particularly around work, like academic work and so forth. Then really we sort of create our reality that way. You can see that it's easier to see that in someone else when we come to this portion. And then you kind of see, well, maybe at some point it's back to that self-acceptance and self-love and forgiveness of yourself. It's like, okay, what were my actual thoughts about money? Maybe I was like that person, and then when you shift that, you actually will create that reality of people have experienced that. If money, there's these affirmations like money flows to me easily, effortlessly, and in abundance. And they just kind of keep repeating that. And in a sense, they're changing this mindset. And really your life, what happens is there's a particular part in your brain called the reticular activating system. It's back here. People might know about this in the brainstem. And it basically, because there's billions of inputs coming into us every second, we have to focus on something, our conscious mind, because it's like a flashlight. It's even smaller than that, metaphorically, that kind of puts your awareness on everything that's happening. So if you set up your mindset or use that as an affirmation, like money flows to me easily, effortlessly, and abundantly, then what happens is even though you may be giving out money, but then whenever you see money coming in, you tend to pay attention to it. And then you're like, oh, look, this kind of reinforces this belief. And then it just starts snowballing like that. Whereas you could completely pay attention to other things or even the opposite thing. And then you start to kind of pay attention to that more and more. So this mindset piece really kind of can create either, it creates a kind of a reinforcing cycle.
Yes, a reinforcing cycle. So we're literally rewiring our brains by focusing on the mindsets and clearing the unbeneficial mindsets. I do just want to share a quick thing. A couple decades ago, as a young adult, I was in a spot where, I think this happens with many. You get credit cards and you've got credit card debt, and maybe we get into a habit where, oh, I can't pay that, and then you got late fees and all this stuff, and it's just a nasty snowball that can go in the wrong direction. And so one of the things that I did, even though I didn't believe, well, let's see, there's something about believing it.
Mm-hmm.
And even though I didn't believe it, because I saw in my reality it was different, I said, I pay all my bills on time. Like what you were just saying, I pay all my bills on time. And even though I wasn't at the time when I committed to that phrase, then I began, that mindset shift was there, and I began making sure that I pay all my bills on time. So it did turn around and pay all my bills on time. And then eventually they were all done and over with. So I can see how it's one thing to say, I am abundant, or I pay all my bills on time. And the belief that you don't, that's really what keeps people from manifesting. So when we're working with these transmissions, we're being assisted by the Arcturians to really root out the unconscious beliefs so that this new imprinting can come in, right?
Exactly. Yeah, I love. Thank you for sharing that personal example and that powerful success story, because it points out a couple, these subtle nuances or additions. So like first, that just hearing you say that is that the shift in the cycle, occurs first in the mental plane, the mental dimension. Even though, like you said, in physical reality, it might be that, there's still credit card debt, but you had already made the shift in the mental plane. And that's how it all starts, like according to the multidimensional model. Things always start in the spiritual world first, and then may take time to actually manifest into the physical. But you made that commitment in the mental plane. And then the other thing is that, which was key, is that you did a physical action, which is that you probably, even though you were in debt, you started to pay your bills on time, like you made a physical action. And even if it's small, I think for people like as we're doing this, or even just people could start now, like if you decide to make a change, like, oh, I'm, back to something like the writer piece, you may not have a published book or even a blog or even a newsletter or anything, but you're saying I'm a writer now, and then you just like write one sentence that actually you physicalized it, and that's kind of the beginning. So I think you need both of those things, the shift in the mindset, like that commitment, that, like you said, reinstruction, and then you just do one even really small physical action to get it going.
Yes. All right. Beautiful. I can feel that people are going to be using this for many areas of their lives, not just abundance. Or I really think that it boils down to lack consciousness. Let's call it lack consciousness. We can get out of lack consciousness. That encompasses everything. It encompasses all the ways that we talk to ourselves, right? Whether it's we enjoy the bodies that we have, or the relationships that we have, the lack consciousness we can really shift out of with these transmissions. And so the third transmission is the self-talk. And this is important because, wow, why is it that we give ourselves so much faith in our worry and our doubt?
Mhm.
Like our worry and our doubt, we believe that 111%. Whereas the affirmations that we want to bring in, we're kind of like wavering or waffling on. So this is going to shift because that is self-talk. It's negative self-talk that is actually wiring our brains to keep manifesting the same. So this third one is like the icing on the cake that's going to encapsulate all of the transmissions into something really powerful.
Mhm. Yeah, I think again, you hit the nail on the head in fact that all of these is really a compassionate look at ourselves to shift from, things, ways that aren't really serving us, that we may not even be fully aware of. They're kind of semi-conscious to things that are consciously choosing, things that will move us in a very positive, vibrant, healthy, balanced, life and experience of life on all the dimensions. But yeah, the reason self-talk, is one area just on its own, esoterically is so important, because the throat chakra is the kind of the next level of creation. We have physical creation. Is actually the sex chakra and throat chakra are correspondences. The sex chakra is our lower creative ability, and that energy, when it kind of comes up to the throat chakra, is like our like artistic creativity, or our creativity on a higher plane, whether that's energetic, emotional, mental, or spiritual. But just kind of coming to what we know from the psychological literature, just on our own experience, like it's interesting, like we would probably, our self-talk, if we were to record it, write it down, for most people, you would never say that to someone else. Like you would not have no friends, like how you kind of like, make a mistake and you might say something about yourself, and or something of this nature. Like, so that's kind of a very interesting realization that people would probably recognize, oh yeah, like I don't really have loving kindness even to myself, and I'm not really even recognizing it until you were actually to maybe like write it out, like I mentioned. then the other thing they noticed, Tony Robbins sort of started this, at least was a big proponent, kind of modeling, like looking at what successful people do.
Mhm.
And this was just a particular area of this kind of peak performance research. So a very intense experience is actually these MMA fighters, like in sports, because you're just by yourself. Of course, I'm not necessarily suggesting violence, but within a sporting context, that's one of the most intense individual experience you can have, because you're just basically in there, kind of in that cage, one-on-one, and there's only really one winner. And when you're the loser, you're very much in a very losing state. So they asked, what was the number one factor that determines those who end up being champions? Like, is it their training, their diet, who their coach was, how long they've been training? What they found was it's what they say when they get into the ring, when the door closes. So it's sort of like if we were to take our most intense experience, whatever that might be, maybe giving birth or taking care of a child or at your point of death, whatever it might be, and you could have someone there to do research on you. The thing that really it seems like matters the most is what are you saying to yourself in your mind? And so that's another reason why self-talk, which we probably already knew intuitively, we've known it esoterically, is so important. And just as a last point, esoterically, I was taught this in pranic healing and narcotic yoga when I studied that, and that was started by Master Chogyam Sui. So they have very powerful meditations in their spiritual tradition called Arhatic Yoga. It really expands your aura. You become energetically very strong. Your chakras become really strong and active. And what they said is you have to watch out what you say, because now that your energy field is stronger, if you how you might quip and sort of make fun of someone, not speaking of yourself, of course, you could do that for yourself too, but you just sort of make a joking comment, like it can really, like a shooting like an arrow, like as a thought form, really affect them. And so because it's your thought form backed by how much energy you're putting into it. So if you have certain practices that build your energy field, then that thought really can manifest quite fast or penetrate into someone else's field quite deeply. Whereas if your energy field, wasn't so strong, if you just said that, they may or may not really, they may just laugh at it or not take much notice of it. So again, we kind of really know this power of the speech is fundamental to creation.
Yes, absolutely. So beautiful. It brings to mind the Hawaiians, the kahunas, that say aloha is the breath and our breath is sacred and you do not speak ill of another person. And even in a joking way, we can feel that in our bodies when we do this light work. We can feel how even a joke is real in some way. So very good. As you were sharing, it brings to mind tennis as well. We
Mhm.
call it, we're working on something called Zen tennis, where when you step onto the court, we can give ourselves such negative talk. We can say sorry. If you have a doubles partner, you can say sorry. And there's a rule, never say sorry. Don't ever say sorry. And Zen tennis really means, can you not judge yourself and others on the court? Because we get really judgmental of ourselves. So this series feels really empowering. It really does. It feels like what a great way to accelerate manifestation and goals in our life and bring in a bunch of new things to get that book done, to build that new business, to have success in the business, to bring in clients, new clients, and to, wow, make a move somewhere. I know many people feel like they want to move somewhere on the planet, somewhere new. They're getting that call. And so we can empower all of these actions with these mindsets that we're speaking of. It feels really fresh and empowering.
Oh yeah, that's great. And thanks for reminding me of the Zen tennis. I know I played tennis in high school a lot and was very much into the mind game. Maybe tried to try to improve my physical game. But my tennis coach recommended the book by Timothy Galloway. Maybe
Yeah.
that's what you're referring to, The Inner Game of Tennis. It became a classic and had those principles of kind of almost like the spiritual side of sport and tennis. And I think it actually got me onto the spiritual path. Is one of the first
Really?
books. Mhm.
Oh, okay. Because I was on this spiritual path and then I got into tennis and I realized, wow, it's really competitive. What do we do about this? And then it was
Mm.
very interesting just to witness the self-talk in tennis. And so that's how this term Zen tennis was developed. So we'll see how we move in our world with mindsets that are beneficial. Beautiful. And one of the things that is really great about our group sessions is that the sharing that happens from others is really helpful for everyone in the pod, in the group, in the circle. So we look forward to that and we look forward to seeing everyone again. Is there anything else that you'd like to share about these transmissions before we do a sampling of one?
Oh yeah, I was thinking about yeah, I felt the sample come in already, or I was thinking about it. I was thinking maybe the self-talk one, because then people could even, benefit from that right away, just from listening to that. I think there'd be like immediate, almost like the spoon bending, you immediately can see the result with the spoon bending and kind of bring that energy in, and you may get insights even just by this talk. But like, oh yeah, I tend to say this particular thing that I know is not enhancing me, and just that realization, and then of course maybe even a change or maybe a replacement with another more affirming way of saying things, maybe when that condition comes up, could really be a game changer. That simple switch. But yeah, maybe we'll experience the Arcturian self-talk kind of transmission.
Yes.
And okay. Okay. Yeah. So this is basically, we're kind of working with the divine and our guides. They're really bringing it through. And of course, the Arcturian consciousness, which is always very supportive. But this is around either clearing first any negative or de-enhancing self-talk. Also to bring that self-talk to our awareness, which we may have not even been conscious of. And then short imprinting phase of positive self-talk. And you don't have to be aware of any of this right now. It could also unpack in the near future. Okay, so we're starting the Arcturian self-talk transmission. So we're beginning first with this awareness and then clearing phase. Simply being aware is perhaps the entire goal of how we speak to ourselves. Now we're doing an imprinting, inspiring of positive ways of speaking to ourselves, maybe subvocal or even subconscious, simply allowing the higher spiritual realities to download that. You may be aware of that now, even one or two phrases you'd like to incorporate, or maybe something that just will unpack. You could also download a power word, something that puts you in a positive state just by that one word or phrase. which will be, of course, particular to you, your system, your seven subtle bodies, predilections, wiring. You can ask your higher self or your guides for what that phrase might be. You just say that whenever you need a boost of energy or a change in the emotional quality of what's going on, something positive. Okay, that completes the transmission. You can gently come back to your physical body. When you feel comfortable, you can snap your fingers.
So in just those few moments, that was really expansive and refreshing and so beautiful. Instantly, I felt the wounded child. I felt the wounded child come in, and I heard it's all a cry for love, and then self-love, such a healing of self-love, really feeling the power of our ability to give love to ourselves more than anyone or anything can. And before you began even the next phase, I got the word, I got the imprint of timelessness.
Oh, nice.
My particular self-talk, and timelessness, and I am eternal. So that is very powerful. And I know others witnessed something in their own. And these are the nuggets that we get to take as we build our lives. And so watch what happens on the backside, on the flip side of this, because it feels really expansive and empowering. So thank you.
Thanks for that. And I love that timelessness. It reminds me of a Peruvian shaman who said, there is a spirit of time, and the best way to be in a positive resonance relationship is to recognize that we have enough time to do everything and not have that time worry and so that timelessness kind of fits right there.
I mean, just feel that. I get goosebumps all over, just timelessness. Powerful. All right. Well, we hope that everyone watching and listening will join us for these series. They're so beautiful to join together in the group energy and the sharing with everyone, and to connect in this new year in this new way, and really feel the support of not only the Arcturians and our guides, but others in our circle. So Jean, thank you for this. Would you like to add anything?
Oh no, I really that's beautiful, and thanks so much for sharing that download. And I think even people might adopt that too as a power concept or word. But the last thing that kind of when you said that is, when we are in this positive mindset, this idea, this multidimensional idea of resonance. So then we go into resonance with other thought forms that, of course, are like that, as well as other spiritual beings like angelic beings. We're more in resonance because they're probably in that mindset too, or that kind of thought atmosphere. So it's very conducive, again, this positive cycle that we create.
Yes. And one last thing I want to mention as we were talking, for those who have stepped out of the working world and ventured out on their own in their own businesses, for me, that was one of the hardest things to deprogram from, is my mindset that you have to do something. You have to be busy from 8 a.m. or 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or more to make the money. And so it's actually the opposite. It truly is, where if you can go and get a little bit of exercise in, or get your vibration raised because you're playing with your dog or your cat or your children, or you're doing something fun and enjoyable, then that puts you in a vibration. When you go back to your desk, you can get a lot of things done rather quickly. So that is just illustrative of the way that we can change with the mindsets, because we don't have to buy into any of that anymore. And I just find it interesting for those who step back from that the working world, and go to work for ourselves or be in service for ourselves, it is different. So it's empowering to know that too. It's liberation, actually.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would second everything you said. I would, yeah, experience that too. Precisely. I love it. Yeah.
Because we feel guilty at first, right? When you went off on your own, did you ever feel guilty
Oh,
because
yeah.
yeah. And so you got to get over that. And
Yeah.
these transmissions absolutely will help us get over any guilt or shame as we purify and then imprint anew. We're really looking forward to this. And again, I just want to say that every one of these are recorded for those who can't join us live. It's a wonderful way to, by the end of the day, you can check in and get those recordings. And each of the webinars are extracted for just the energy session so that people can go back and experience those energy sessions again, which are really quite beautiful. And again, very supportive and empowering. So really an awesome time with you, Jean, and we're looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thanks, Lauren. And thanks, everyone. Great to see you.
Thank you. We hope you join us. Namaste.